Hello viewers and welcome to my blog for the Spanish Grand Prix, Barcelona. Interesting race. Certainly the weekend kicked off with some drama. Lewis Hamilton getting an amazing pole position there, putting the McLaren on pole and then being moved back down to the back of the grid. Now, a lot of people thought it was quite harsh. Indeed, I was quite surprised. I was expecting a 5, maybe 10 place grid penalty. Back of the grid was what was deemed. A lot of fans were obviously annoyed at that. They felt it was a little bit harsh. I guess at the end of the day, if the rules are broken, the rules are broken. And you don't normally see cars running out of fuel in qualifying. You do sometimes with the race, but not so much with quali. And there's lots of reasons for that. But either way, obviously he had to start from the back. It was always going to be a challenging day from there. Barcelona isn't the easiest circuit to overtake on. And it has to be said that DRS, I think, has made a huge bonus to the spectacle of the circuit because it was notoriously boring most of the time. And though you could overtake into turn one, which was helped by virtue of the end of the lap, was slightly more flowing in nature in years gone by, it was still very, very tricky indeed. And that's why you always see that classic moment of who was it? Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna, wheel to wheel. Of course, Lewis Hamilton had a fantastic day in the end from his own perspective of driving. You know, he managed to cut through the field. He cut up pretty quickly, actually, up to 18th and then from there up to 11th. It was just interesting as well, seeing how Pastor Maldonado was able to sort of handle his Williams, losing out in turn one to Fernando Alonso. I suppose the thought was always going to be that Fernando was just going to hammer it round. You know, he's always been very quick at the Spanish Grand Prix. You know, he's always pushed really hard in front of his fans and given it everything. And the Ferrari has proved to be pretty strong in race trim. So I guess we were all expecting the Ferrari to just sort of run away with it. But Pastor, very mature driving from him early on. We had the Bruno Senna bumping into Grosjean. Just a little bit of bumpies there, but it didn't do any harm. Pieces coming off, but it didn't seem to do any harm to Grosjean. And of course, then we had Schumacher smacking into the back of Bruno Senna. A strange one, really. I think what it is that Senna moved offline on the inside to defend. Michael Schumacher was staying on the racing line, and then when it came to the actual corner in the braking phase, Bruno broke towards the racing line, giving Michael nowhere. Michael tried to take averting action, but it was too late. He'd committed to that outside either way. I think to go round the outside, a move which took place many times that day. It was a strange one from Senna because his tyres are wearing out. Holding Schumacher behind was always going to be a challenge. I think you need to be sensible about it. I think later in the day, I think Kimi Raikkonen was overtaken in a very similar way when his tyres were wearing out, and he knew just to stay on that racing line and to force them off, basically, but certainly no movement or over-aggressive defending. It's a strange one for Bruno. He seems to be making lots of mistakes at the moment. I don't know whether that's because he's under pressure or because at this particular race his teammate was doing so well, but either way, it was certainly a race that was one he would probably like to forget. Kobayashi had a really good run, didn't he? Coming up there inside Jenson Button, who was having a dreadful day. Jenson Button's car, he just couldn't find a balance with it. It's really strange because in early practice he was very confident. The car was running really well for him. He was struggling a little bit on the prime tyre all weekend, and then when it came to the actual race, just couldn't find a setup that worked for him. It's a very curious race, isn't it? Like you say, you have Maldonado at the front and Bruno at the back. You have Lewis at the front and you have Jenson at the back. You have, I say at the back, further back, and so on. There's some teams where there's like the Lotuses where the cars are neck and neck, and there's some teams where they just can't seem to find a parity between their two drivers. And it's strange how you can set it up for one and not the other. Always a curious one with F1, but I have seen it many times before, especially for myself in the Damon Hill era. I used to go to the races and it'd be great in quali, and then in the race it'd be flying off somewhere. It'd always be a disaster. So I was saying that on the coverage, Damon Hill was putting that firmly at Jenson's doorstep, the blame for that, saying he couldn't get the best for it. But I distinctly remember Damon Hill saying about, I can't understand why the car was set up yesterday and not working today. How can that happen? So I've actually seen him say it before, and it does happen to all the drivers from time to time. Of course, Vettel had a quick run at the end, didn't he? Passing Button as well. Good speed. Kobayashi passing Rosberg, that was a good move for him. And so, seeing that last run from Vettel, he really had a lot of grip in those tyres in the end. He really found a sweet spot for himself. Lewis Hamilton as well was moving up on Rosberg, could have probably got another place. And of course, you had Kimi Räikkönen, that final set of tyres, he was way quicker than the two guys in front of him. And had he had that stop 3 or 4 laps sooner, he could have won the race. I mean, it's the second time there where Kimi's really been in line for a win, and the strategy of just let the team down. Meanwhile, Lewis, solid drive from him. Obviously, there was a little bump in the pits again. They need to tidy themselves up there. A little bit of panic. I'd say some of that could have been brought on by the fact that they've had pit crews under so much pressure, especially after the last couple of races, that they're more inclined to do something wrong. They may have even had a new pit crew there. So I'm sure McLaren will get through that. But I think really, for a team that's supposed to have had the strongest package this year, they've certainly not shown it. They've completely wasted it, and they really need to find out what's going on there, because there's got to be parity between the two drivers. And it's something which McLaren have never had, actually, looking back. They've always had one driver doing well and one not doing so well. It's a team where they need to find a balance, definitely, between the two. But the day goes to Pastor Maldonado, obviously overtaking Fernando in the final pit stops and putting in a peerless drive, an absolutely perfect drive from Pastor Maldonado. I was so impressed with him all day. It was so unlike him, wasn't it? I mean, when you look at Pastor's normal driving, there's a lot of body language with the car. There's a lot of leaning and forcing the car into corners. It's very aggressive style. Not something which you would say, he was like. He was balanced. He was smooth. He was working with the tyres. He was controlling the pressure from Fernando as if Fernando put no pressure on him at all. It was fantastic to see how he controlled the pace in those final few laps. It was a champion's drive, and very different. When we saw last year, we had the Lewis bumping wheels with him in Spa. We had the bump, the coming together with Webber, as it were, when they were arguing at Abu Dhabi. We had the crash in Australia on the final lap, which was very unlucky, but either way, the mistake was made. And so here we are this time, same guy, but from the outward perspective, you'd say it was a different driver under the helmet. A fantastic drive for him. Let's hope he can do that again, because obviously it was nice for Frank Williams, and a happy birthday to Frank as well, because Williams is a magnificent team. They've been around for a long time, and Frank's fought hard to keep that team in operation. They deserve some respect, and I think the matching together with the Renault engine this year was always going to be positive for them. I'm sure Rubens Barrichello would have wished he was driving the car for the team still, but either way, Pastor did a fantastic job, and congratulations to him. So a great end to the race there. We've got another race winner for this crazy championship. We've got Kimi Räikkönen up to 4th place in the points table. He's sneaking his way up. One win and he'll be top of the table. Keep an eye on Kimi. The question is, do Lotus have the resources to keep their car being developed all year, like Red Bull, like McLaren, like Ferrari? If they can, they're going to be in line for wins. If not, they're going to have squandered a lot of points that they're going to rely on later. Of course, that wasn't it for the day. We had the fire at Williams. Watching it at the time on Sky TV, suddenly we jumped to Ted Kravitz, and there's a wall of flame coming out the pits. Smoke billowing up in the air, everybody running for their lives, and there's suddenly all the teams running in there with every single fire extinguisher they can get hold of. It was quite a shocking moment, actually, for everybody concerned. The fire was quickly controlled. There must have been easy 20-30 people firing fire extinguishers and hoses from both directions at it, and it wasn't really clear how it started at the time or if there was anyone still in there. But what it shows is the incredible risk that if that fire had managed to spread, it could have been disastrous. And I think it was some heroics by some of the mechanics there that they ran in there and they got to that fire as quickly as possible with the right equipment, and a well done to everyone who was involved in that, and to keep it under control. They definitely saved lives, not just along the pits, but in that whole structure. I mean, it really could have just been an absolute disaster, and it was a credit to everyone and all the teams involved that they were able to get that under control. That was a relief to everyone, I think, in the sport. There is one person, our hearts go to them, who's suffering from burns at the moment, the mechanic who was there when the fire took place, and he's still in hospital, but in a stable condition, and our thoughts are with him at the moment. So certainly a great day for Williams. A shame that what happened at the end, and I'm sure there'll be an inquiry and we'll learn more about that later. But we roll on to the Monaco Grand Prix and the excitement that Grand Prix holds for us, the potential that it holds. There are all these world champions, all this potential, and tyres, and we still don't have a clue how the tyres work and who's the strongest runner. We just don't know with this championship. There's so much to happen in the coming races. But that's it from me for now for this blog. I look forward to your feedback as ever, and as ever, more soon.